would like to introduce Professor Michele Riccardi. He's a senior researcher at Transcrime and a professor of economics at the Università Cattolica in Milan. Welcome. Professor Riccardi, can you explain what your area of expertise is?
My research focuses on money laundering, on organized crime, and especially organized crime infiltration into the legitimate company, and confiscation and recovery of criminal assets.
So what does a typical project involving financial crime prevention or asset recovery look like?
Our projects are usually aimed at providing users, such as public bodies, public authorities, police organizations, and private companies with data, with statistics, with indicators about how risky is a geographic area or a business sectors in terms of vulnerability to money laundering, to organized crime, or to corruption. So we basically provide them with elements, with ingredients on which they can base their investigations, their risk assessment models, their customer due diligence.
What role does company information play in your line of work?
It is crucial. If 30 years ago the focus by criminologists was posed on individuals, now to study and to tackle organized crime and complex criminal phenomena, we have to look at legitimate businesses. Criminal groups use legitimate business to conceal their illicit proceeds, to achieve a number of criminal objectives, and therefore to study companies has become central. And in this respect, company information has become a crucial data for any kind of research on organized crime and financial crime.
And specific databases or data sets such as corporate ownership structures or PEP and sanction lists, how do these help you?
It has become central. Ownership information is important because we need to know who are the owners of companies, where are these owners based in which kind of jurisdiction. There are certain jurisdictions which are more risky than others. If the owners are linked to criminal groups or have been involved in previous investigations, and that's why information such as sanction list has become important. And ownership structure has become a key to better understand the role that companies play in the strategy of organized crime group. We need to understand their opacity. We need to understand how corporate structure can be exposed to different criminal risks.
What do you mean when you're referring to the opacity of ownership?
Well, there is much evidence, and we may mention also Paradise Paper or Panama Paper investigation, that opaque legal structure can be used for a number of criminal purposes: tax evasion, corruption, to conceal money laundering or organized crime schemes. Therefore, to understand how opaque are companies is important. For example, it is necessary to understand how complex they are. What is the distance between a company and its beneficial owners? Is it direct, or are beneficial owners controlling the company through other legal structures set up in different countries? The more complex, the more difficult to do investigation, the more risky. A second aspect is to look at their exposure to certain jurisdiction. There are countries which are more risky than others, and therefore to look at how much companies are exposed toward offshore countries, tax havens, or other risky areas across the globe is also important. And finally, we need to understand how available is the ownership information. There are certain countries where to get the name of the owners of companies is very, very difficult. And therefore, this is a third element which needs to be considered. If we are able to recombine all these dimensions of opacity into single scores, into rating, that could really help investigators, public authorities to understand how risky is a company, how it can be connected to money laundering, to corruption, to tax evasion. I think that this is an area of work where we can much improve our research and generally the activity of investigation.
What was the biggest financial crime prevention project you were involved in?
In this respect, I can mention an ongoing project, which is a research funded by the European Commission, which is called MORE project, which is aimed at mapping across all Europe the risks of organized crime infiltration into legal businesses. So for each European region, for each geographic area, for each business sector, we are looking and collecting data, for example, on cash intensiveness, which is an important factor facilitating infiltration. We are collecting data on the number of organized crime groups which are active. We are collecting case studies. It is a massive activity of data collection. It is not easy. It is very challenging, and we need to rely on a wide network of experts, of contact points in each of these countries among the police, law enforcement, financial intelligence unit, public authorities, who help us in identify the right data, the right cases, the right information to be used in the research.
Who are the bad guys in your line of work?
Of course, we are targeting criminals, so they are the bad guys. But since our activity is heavily reliant on data and statistics, bad guys are also all those companies which do not give data and statistics the right relevance, the right attention. We are trying to push authorities to collect better data, to improve the quality and the quantity of data, and to make these statistics available for research purposes. We think that this is a crucial step if we want to improve the level of our research and also to improve its usefulness to users.
You mentioned them, and we've seen lots of references to the Panama Papers or the Paradise Papers. Are you working with investigative journalists, or is their role similar to yours?
Our role is similar, although we adopt two different perspectives. They usually looked at individual cases, companies involved in corruption investigations, or people who are trying to evade taxes, going abroad, going offshore. While our perspective is more macro, so we are not looking at single individuals, but providing broad pictures of what are the risks of tax evasion, of money laundering across country, across sectors, and so on. We do work with journalists in the sense that sometimes we share projects. We have just concluded a report for the Italian Ministry of Justice about the presence of mafia groups abroad, of Italian mafias. They contributed with providing case studies. We did the research part. So we share the data, we share the objective, although we have two different perspectives.
Is your work ever dangerous?
Because of this, because we do not focus on single individuals, our work is less dangerous than that of journalists or of investigators. However, it could be possible that somebody do not wish to us work on disentangling the opacity or the riskiness of their companies, and therefore could be a bit annoyed about that. But to date, we haven't received any extortion or any kind of violence in this respect.
You're involved in several EU research projects. What can you tell us about them in terms of anti-money laundering research?
Well, money laundering is now at the top of the global agenda, is in the middle of the political debate. However, the level of research on money laundering is still very low, still very weak. There is much to do in this respect. We have just ended a research project funded by the European Commission aimed at assessing the risk of money laundering in 3 countries, in Italy, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, in which we mapped across regions, geographic regions, and across business sector what are the most risky the most vulnerable to money laundering through a scientific methodology. And so we looked at several data and factors. We looked at cash, we looked at the exposure to offshore jurisdiction, we looked at the level of corruption, the level of tax evasion, of shadow economy, and to recombine them into synthetic scores, which then could help public authorities, for example, to understand which regions deserve further investigation or where to allocate investigative resources.
What's unique about Transcrime and who is involved?
Transcrime is unique because it is one of the biggest research centers on crime research at European level. We are about 30 people now, because Transcrime is a research center of Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore. And therefore we have a wide network of partners, of experts, of academics all around the world. We worked for the United Nations, we work for the European Commission, we work for multinational companies, and we work for ministries and institutions and authorities at local and global level. And therefore we are somehow international, and also our research is international. We think that organized crime is transnational by nature. That's why a country-specific focus is not enough to do research on this topic.
Professor Riccardi, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.